All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you first to our sponsors of this event, Santa Cruz YIMBY, Housing Santa Cruz County, Affordable Housing Now, and the Student Housing Coalition. It's great to have such wonderful partners supporting housing in the city. Housing, as we know, is probably the most important issue to most people in the city of Santa Cruz, and for those that don't have it as their most important issue, it's certainly connected to every other issue. For those who are students here, it causes housing insecurity means you don't have a good of a time as learning. Housing insecurity means you're not focused on your studies. For young adults, they don't see themselves building a family in Santa Cruz, having a long-term future here. For those who are older, our lack of housing options means there's no way to downsize, no way to move into a home that's right for you as you grow older. And it has a negative impact on many other things in our county. We're seeing in the city that families aren't moving here, families are leaving, and school enrollment is down. That's a direct result of us not building housing over the past few decades. And housing is on our ballot this March, this November, and will continue to be on our ballot. So it's important to show up now for this election and show up in the future to make sure that we have pro-housing candidates in office and that we pass pro-housing measures. I'd like to acknowledge two of our endorsed pro-housing candidates here tonight. Joe Thompson, running for Santa Cruz City Council District 5. Thanks for coming out, Joe. And Gabriela Triguero, running for Santa Cruz City Council District 1. Thank you both for being here. It's great to see you. I'd like to just introduce Measure M, and then we'll have a speaker from the campaign, or no on Measure M, rather, before the speaker comes up and talks. You probably heard about Measure M at this point. Measure M would be a disaster for housing in a city. Measure M is a mess. Measure M does not add up. Measure M would mean less housing, less affordable housing, and less options for residents of the city. We have a huge roster of folks opposed to this measure, including Affordable Housing Now, the Democratic Women's Club of Santa Cruz, Housing Matters very recently, Housing Santa Cruz County, the Monterey and Santa Cruz Building and Construction Trades Council, New Way Homes, Santa Cruz County Chamber of Commerce, Santa Cruz County Democratic Party, the Santa Cruz Sentinel, UCSC College Dems, UCSC Student Housing Coalition, Santa Cruz, Strongtown Santa Cruz, and Santa Cruz YIMBY. Dan, if you want to come up and say a few words about why we should be voting no on M to preserve housing in the city.
Okay, thank you. Hi. This is not scary at all. Okay. So thank you for coming this afternoon and, hearing your pro-housing voices. 2023 was a really big year for the city of Santa Cruz. It received its pro-housing designation status. It reached its 5th cycle housing element goal for all income ranges. And it was the only jurisdiction in the city of Santa Cruz, in the county of Santa Cruz, to have its housing element approved by the Department of Housing and Community Development. So, big year. It continued its progress on 2 affordable housing projects. It started construction on one of the affordable housing projects. And in a month, or later this month, we should be starting construction on the largest affordable housing development in the city's history, I believe, with the construction start of Pacific Station North. And that's awesome, right? A lot of great progress. And sadly, if Measure M passes, the progress that we saw this year, we won't see again for a very long time. It may not be repeated. And I did not write any more after that. And we could be at risk of losing our pro-housing designation if this measure passes. We could be at risk of getting the builder's remedy if we do not meet our housing element goals. Yes, we did not have to rezone. That's great. However, if we don't meet any other of our goals within the programs listed in the housing element, we could be subject to the builder's remedy. And one of those big projects is the Coral Street Navigation Center and additional housing units there. So it would be a big loss to our community if we are not able to provide homeless services to our homeless residents. And so I think it's really important that we also remember are fiscally responsible. Elections are very expensive. They're not cheap. It's over $170,000 a year, or $170,000 for an election. That's a lot, and we can't be afford to be spending on that. We should be spending all of that on creating more housing opportunities and making sure that we have qualified staff to ensure that we can move forward with our housing progress. And so we continue to urge you to vote no on M, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Diana. It occurs to me I should introduce myself. Ryan Meckel, I'm a lead with Santa Cruz EMB. Thank you, Diana. Next up, we have Elaine Johnston with Housing Santa Cruz County, the Executive Director. Elaine has been a key partner in getting more housing built now and for planning for more housing in the future. Some of you may have heard that our cities and counties in this region are going through something called their housing element, where we plan for housing over the next 8 years. Elaine has been key in coming to meetings with stakeholders, with city council members, with supervisors to make sure that we're planning for housing in the right places for everybody for the future, and not just stagnating in where we are right now. So Elaine, if you want to come up and plug Housing Santa Cruz County and all the great work that you're doing, please come on up.
Good afternoon. As I said, my name is Elaine Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of Housing Santa Cruz County. And I'm going to start off by sharing a story. And it's not just any story, it's a really important story. So I was having lunch with a new friend a couple of months ago, and he happens to be the owner of the newspaper called Grown Up in Grown Up in Santa Cruz, and it's part of Good Times. And when we were talking, we got talking about, we're both from New York, and I grew up in a housing project, and I had recently lost my mother, and I was sharing with him that my mother lived in the same building for 70 years. That 70, not 70. And when I was sharing that with him, he said, "Wow, Elaine." And the most other important thing with that was I grew up, it was 6 buildings, they were 14 stories each, and I grew up on the 11th story. And I never once thought about the height of a building until this measure came up. And it was very eye-opening, because I was like, what? We didn't think about the buildings, it was the people in it, that we were so rooted in that community that was the reason why my mother was still there for 70 years. And not only was she there for 70 years, my family was the longest living family in Gun Hill Projects. Yes. And so I wanted to share that because it is so absolutely critical. When we are talking about housing, we're not talking about heights, and we're talking about people. You know, we're talking about people being rooted someplace instead of 3 months here, 3 months here, 3 months here, right? And so when I was talking with Brad about that, he said, "Elaine, I want you to tell that story." So I wrote about it, and it just got released. It's in the newspaper, page 6. And I would encourage everybody to read it because it's so profound with the times that we are in right now. I think it's so incredibly important that when we focus on housing, that we focus on people. That we are building so people can have a safe, not just a safe, stable place to come on, but someplace where they're rooted, where they're not putting their stuff in a storage unit because they're not going to stay that long. You know, and so in the article, one of the things you'll see at the end, because they encouraged me to a call of action, and what the call of action I put was to vote no on Measure M. And of course vote yes on K and L, because those 3 measures are absolutely critical for us in this community right now. And absolutely critical. If Measure M passes, it would be detrimental to this community. And the people, the students, the seniors, the workers, everyone deserves to have a place to live if they're serving us and they're serving our children. So please, vote no on Measure M. Nope. I'm not done. A little bit about Housing Santa Cruz County. We also have what's called our Affordable Housing Month that's in May. We are in the planning stages of it. I highly encourage everybody, if you're not on our mailing list, please get on our mailing list, because we want to continue to build up on Affordable Housing Month. Last year was amazing, the year before that was amazing, and we just want to continue to build the momentum, bringing the community together. Join us, sign up to put on an event. We want to keep the momentum going about the importance of housing, the importance of how you're just as important as you is important, and everybody engaged in, because what I know about where I came from, I'm honored that I was rooted someplace. We may not have been rich, but we were rich in our hearts, right? And when my mother passed away, I had this fleeting thought, and this is what I was sharing with Brad, that, oh my God, 711 Magenta Street will no longer be a part of my life. And then I go, yes, it will, Elaine. We still go back there every year. It's like this year will be year number 46, where we have Gun Hill Day. And so I talk about this because that's what I see for this community. That's what I see for downtown. I can't wait to see how downtown continues to flourish. And so with that, I invite you to participate in Affordable Housing Month. Go to our website. If you're on our mailing list, you should have received some information. Sign up, show up, let's do the work. And lastly, there's a city bond that will be going on the ballot in November, and HSCC will be playing a major role in that. And so I just want to put that out there. Right now, we're still this preliminary work happening, but I will again encourage you to sign up, because we will be reaching out for support when the time comes for volunteers, because it's got to be an all hands on deck kind of time. Actually, it always is, but 2024, as Diana was saying, it's critical. And so we're going to need everyone in the community to step up, step in, lean in to whatever we have to do to make this a win-win. And I want to leave with this. If your measure wins, it doesn't stop there. We have to keep doing the work. We can celebrate, but then we got to keep doing the work, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. I think that's a great point. Like you mentioned, housing is not one and done. People keep having kids, people move around. We need to keep building housing, not just now, but in the future. And I would really encourage you to sign up for Housing Santa Cruz County's mailing list to have a community of folks who care about getting more housing in this community, getting more affordable housing. Next up, we have the Student Housing Coalition to speak a little bit about how housing affects students. But before you come up here, I just want to say a little bit more. Students make up 30% of our community, and yet oftentimes they aren't able to stay here after they go to college. I myself was lucky enough to both go to UCSC and live here afterwards, but I'm one of those people, like I mentioned earlier, that doesn't see myself building a future here, having a family here, staying in Santa Cruz, and the core reason for that is housing. I don't have a place that I can see myself 5 years from now. I'm living in a converted master bedroom, and there just aren't options for people like me in Santa Cruz. And I'm not the only one. I think, Bodie, you'll speak to this a little bit as well, but there are literally hundreds to thousands of students who would like to stay in Santa Cruz, like to contribute to our community, like to, patron our local businesses and join clubs and groups and have friends here, but it's simply not an option. We don't have the housing for them. And we're losing out on great community members because of this. So more housing means a better community, it means more people in our community, and it means a more lively city. Bodie and Nicholas, if you want to come up. Thank you both.
Thank you. My name is Bodie Shargell. I'm here as a member at large of the Student Housing Coalition. And the Student Housing Coalition, I think we're here to speak on behalf of the students in Santa Cruz who are pro-housing. Students are one of the groups most acutely affected by our housing crisis here in Santa Cruz. And that's not a distinction that we want to keep. We don't want to be the people suffering the most from the worst housing crisis in the country. The Student Housing Coalition is committed to empowering specifically students to combat the housing crisis because this crisis exists in part due to an imbalance in power. Students have been disempowered in favor of wealthy homeowners, and over generations, this reality doesn't just perpetuate systemic racism and wealth inequality, but it also gives us the kind of housing market that we're in right now. Of course, the people who already got theirs when it comes to housing would rather have a sleepy downtown with a lot of parking than one with housing available to people who otherwise couldn't live in Santa Cruz. Of course, wealthy interests are going to seize opportunities for price gouging at the expense of renters. And of course, people who have been comfortable for decades will be unwilling to entertain a perceived jeopardization of that comfort, even if it's in the name of reducing carbon emissions for the sake of future generations. As students, we have not gotten ours when it comes to housing, and we will never get ours under the current status quo we have now. We're more worried about if we'll have to live in our cars than if we'll have enough places to park them in Santa Cruz. We have no comfort to jeopardize when we know that the future generations who suffer the consequences of climate change might just be us. If we give students a voice proportional to the one that we deserve, we can make Santa Cruz a better place and a place that works for everyone. That includes students, but it also includes the homeowners who have gotten theirs. While our motivations may be different, there is still a shared vision that benefits us all. Just wait until these folks see what Santa Cruz can be when our artists can once again afford to live here, when all of our restaurants are fully staffed, and when we solve the homelessness crisis in the only way that's possible or has ever been possible, which is by giving people homes. The Student Housing Coalition has endorsed No on Measure M, as well as the campaign of Joe Thompson for Santa Cruz City Council in District 5. But it's not just that. For the past few years, our members have shown up in the dozens to give public comment in support of housing projects and pro-housing policy at the city, county, and state levels. And by the way, dozens is a lot for public comment terms. It's usually like 5 people in there. In doing this, we have balanced the political pressure that stood against affordable housing and given students a voice in these decisions. And we're not slowing down in these efforts, and we hope we can continue to have your support. So I'm going to pass it over now to Nicholas Robles to talk about Measure M and our stance on it.
Great, thank you, Bodhi, and thank you for everybody who's coming out here tonight. And also want to shout out Elaine. That was a really beautiful message that you shared with us. And I wholeheartedly agree. Housing is about the people. So I wanted to talk about the stance on No on Measure M and just what it would mean for the students in Santa Cruz. And so running elections would be expensive and time consuming. Every time we run a city council meeting, it costs our county tax dollars to host them. Tax dollars that could be going into the infrastructure improvements we'd be spending on arguing over. And the voting process would drag out the approval process for all stakeholders. We already have a strenuous process to approve the housing proposals we have now through city council meetings, and adding more discussions and voting process to try and approve a housing proposal leaves it susceptible to more appeals and holdups. The people voting on these yes and no housing proposals won't incorporate the student/very low to low income community community members the Measure M says it's trying to support, because these are the exact same community members with the least amount of time to put into voting processes, whether it be reasons pertaining to class schedules or work schedules that involve upwards of 2 or 3 or more jobs at a time. Stakeholders like undocumented and DACA residents and commuters who could potentially live in new housing don't have the opportunity to vote on these height limit changes. Our friends and families that fall into these situations will be all the more silenced through Measure M, as stated before, of the loops and hurdles one would have to go through for projects our community already shares input on and should be supported by our local elected officials. I think when we talk about affordable housing, we have to think critically about how we show up for our communities and how our communities are able to voice them. Thank you.
Thank you both. I think it's important that we all recognize that housing is not a zero-sum game, and that building housing for some does not mean that others are not benefiting as well. I think in the city, we see especially that students need both. We see clearly not just in the city, but everywhere that students need housing. But students don't have enough housing, and students end up moving into the housing that's available. We see students living in single-family homes meant for families, but because there's no options for them, both the students and the families are not living in ideal situations. So when we build housing for some people, we are actually making housing more accessible for all people. Next up, we have Dawn Lane. I don't think Fred's here. Dawn Lane coming to speak about, again, No on Measure M and what you can do to get out the vote and some other activities to vote housing.
Thanks, Ryan. And Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. It's so great to just see. I think it's so important when we all see allies doing the same work, and it kind of keeps us going. So thank you for that. I'm wearing two hats today. Right now, we thought our mayor, Fred Keeley, was going to be here to speak briefly about measures K and L, but he got held up. So I'm just going to mention very briefly on his behalf that, a lot of YIMBY and a lot of housing organizations, Housing Santa Cruz County, have supported measures K and L. And those are broader measures that don't just have to do with affordable housing, but they do include funding that is going to make a real difference in terms of affordable housing. Both the city and the county do devote staff resources to nurturing new housing projects, and we need that to continue happening. So I hope you'll all join me in supporting measures K and L. So now to my own job. One thing I want to say, because I'm just a minor member of YIMBY's, I just want to really acknowledge the work YIMBY did to put this event together and just really help mobilize people around Measure M. One thing that happened today is a whole bunch of people for a variety of campaigns put out these door hangers that have a No on M pitch on them. And most of the volunteers today who we kind of work for, that were part of the Measure M effort, came through YIMBY's efforts to recruit support. So again, I just really want to appreciate that. And also, several of those people are here right now who did that work, hanging door hangers, and I want to really thank each of you for doing that. That's just part of the routine but important work it takes to win an election, and Measure M is something we need to defeat. So, my principal job here is to say, what can we do? And I think you kind of know, but I want to really reinforce a few things. One is, I know a lot of you are active in social media. We have a lot of material to work with. YIMBY has done a great job. The Measure M campaign is doing a good job creating material to work with to spread the word about the challenges, the negative impacts of Measure M. So wherever you engage, please do it more. Spread the word, like stuff, share stuff. It's really important. Create your own material. Respond to things you see that you know are incorrect. Next, this campaign, it's so funny. I know I was chatting with someone here earlier about that the other side in this effort is kind of touting that our campaign has all the money behind it. Well, as of the last reporting period, they have raised more money than we have. So I just want to encourage you, if you're able to make a little donation to help us get the campaign, keep it moving, that's really important. One, I'm going to reinforce the importance of that. Look what I just got in my mailbox literally today. This is the Yes on M mailing. Not a particularly beautiful piece of work, but it's out there. Thousands of voters are receiving it. We have a piece that is at the printer right now as we speak and will go out in the mail in a few days. We have to pay for that. So that's why I asked for some funds. It's not frivolous. It's kind of the nuts and bolts of a campaign. And then last, I know a lot of you have seen we have yard signs. Also, there's some signs for K&L. I just encourage you, if you have a good spot for one, if you're living in a place where it's going to be hidden, don't worry. But if you have a good spot, take a sign. It really helps. It's not the most important thing in a campaign, but it does two things. It kind of builds morale, kind of, for those of us who are following the campaign, just a sense of like, yeah, we're in it, we're doing this. And then it also, frankly, reminds the other side of the campaign that they do not have a clear path. We're here, and we're going to be getting stronger every day. I think the campaign is really coming together in a nice way. We had a much later start than they did, but now we're moving. So I think our campaign just needs to keep plugging away. We need your help, so please keep doing that. And then last thing I want to say is, Ryan, thank you so much for helping, kind of lead this, and Janine, amazing, Elizabeth, Henry, thank you for all of you who just put this event together, because this is, even though we kind of lifted up Measure M, particularly in this event, it's all about housing in general. I mean, this is just one episode in many episodes of our efforts that are going to take, as others have just said, take years and years of work. And we just need to keep plugging away. So thank you all so much. And Ryan, thanks.
Thank you, Dawn. And I'd like to also shout out Hope. Could you raise your hand, Hope, for putting all of these beautiful flyers and photo tickets together, and just really being such a key part of all this. We really appreciate you. And also all of these great Measure M graphics that we've been sharing on our Instagram, also made by Hope. So superstar, super appreciated. Couldn't have done this without you. We can't keep doing it without you. So just to close, if you are interested in getting involved, I encourage you to check out Santa Cruz YIMBY's table, Housing Santa Cruz County's table, or talking with some of the Student Housing Coalition folks that are here this evening. Affordable Housing Now can't make it, but there's some pins if you want to grab them. I should also give a shout out to Monica Martinez's campaign for coming out. Appreciate it. Also one of our pro-housing endorsed candidates for Santa Cruz Supervisor District 5. So please, we have 50 more minutes or so. If you want to eat some food and drink the drinks that we have before we go, that would be wonderful. And again, if you have time or money to volunteer to any of the campaigns mentioned here tonight, they would certainly appreciate it. And the Santa Cruz residents will thank you for it. Thank you.